In today's video, I'm going to talk about Draft 2 of my cozy fantasy novel and Draft 2.5, as well as the distinction between the two, give you some information on how I planned, prepped, and thought about Draft 2, and just some background information on this fantasy novel. Where did it come from? How did I get into it? And how was it editing in the spring when this is a spring novel? Most of this spring preparing, planning, thinking about, and working on the second draft of my cozy fantasy novel that I'm currently calling or nicknaming Beatrix's Book. I wanted to take you through that process, discuss what I did, how it worked, how it went, and how it's still going, because although I finished what I call my draft 2, at the time of this recording, I'm still working on my draft 2.5, which I will get into the intricacies of later. A little background, because I haven't talked about Beatrix's book before on this channel. The summary, the quick summary is that Beatrix's book I decided to write because it was my most fun idea. I have always wanted to write a book, like most authors I have heard from. It was something that I have wanted to do since I was real little, and I kind of packed it away because I hadn't written anything since high school, I don't think. In college, I was doing a lot of art and music. I was like, it's something I'll come back to. I just don't know right now, and I don't have any ideas that aren't intimidating. All of my ideas were like the kind of idea where I wanted to have like a backlog of books before I took them out. Like they're the kind of ideas that to me feel like I want that to be my masterpiece is such like a hard word because I don't want to be like, and I shall create a masterpiece, a classic. They just feel harder and intimidating, and I want them to be good. And, starting from haven't written in many years to like, let's write something that's really good is way too far of a leap for me. So I started listening to Story Genius and perhaps some other craft books, but that's the main one I remember, and writing my Substack because it was nonfiction, it was easy. The first time I tried to write a fiction story after not writing anything in years felt so incredibly uncomfortable for like reasons and like feelings I can't even access now that I've been writing for I guess a few years. Yeah, I needed my baby steps. And while I was doing this, I was thinking about like, okay, if I come up with an idea for a book, I can do it. But what really unlocked it for me was A Most Agreeable Murder by Julia Seals. And if you have not read this book, it's a good, like, don't be worried. It's not, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to say this, but it's a silly book with a good murder mystery plot that is just so whimsical and ridiculous and still just so good. It's set in the Regency period. It's inspired by Jane Austen and Agatha Christie, which are different time periods, but Agatha Christie inspired the murder mystery part, and Jane Austen inspired the setting and characters and everything. A good example of what this book is like is they live in this town, constantly has sinkholes, which is real silly. I mean, it's not actually real silly, but the way that they discuss them is silly. It's just like, oh my goodness, another sinkhole. Yeah, crazy times. But there are these frogs that are bioluminescent, and they're discussed in this kind of magical way of they're like these glowing frogs. It's never important to the story. It's never really discussed. It's just like, oh yes, and there are also glowing frogs. And that to me was like Julia Seals wrote her most fun idea. She had fun writing this book. She talked about in interviews how she wanted to infuse like the fun that she had playing games with her sister growing up into the book, and I could feel that. It was so palpable. And so I was like, you know what? I could write my most fun idea. So I came up with this idea of Beatrix's book. It did start with like a dream that I had of the ending, but then I built it out into this whole thing and, all of her friends, and I decided that each one could have their own kind of story and I could practice writing different ones. So for example, her friend Vona is going to have a romance, so I can practice writing a romance. And there are a few other ones that are kind of, I'm not solid on yet, but they're like working up there. And so this could be my like most fun set of books where I figure it out. And so that's what I'm doing. So I'm really going hard on the editing of Beatrix's book because I want to flex every muscle. I want to figure out what works. I want to try things. I want to be good at them. I want to be bad at them. I want to just figure it out and like try stuff because that's the point of this book. Especially as a new writer, I have a lot of experience editing shorter pieces. The way I describe it is I feel like a short piece, I can hold the whole thing in my brain at one time. Like I could cut my hands and everything would be in there. The book, oh no, my cupped hands runneth over. Like it's way too big to hold the whole thing in my brain at the same time. And so I was trying to figure out how I could approach editing where I could see the vision of the whole book at the same time or have some sort of plan, because I could just be like, okay, my plan for draft 2, which it is to fix plot issues. Like I'm doing developmental editing specifically for the plot. I could go into it and just start at the beginning and go to the end, but I know what's going to happen is by the end, I will have forgotten some things at the beginning. I will lose steam. Like I might just create new problems. I'll fix lots of stuff, but it's not necessarily going to do what I want it to do. I don't think I can go into draft 2 with no plan. So, Rin, who you may know as CK Jensen here on AuthorTube, on the internet, and as a published author, recommended to me the book, The Magic Words, Writing Great Books for Children and Young Adults by Cheryl B. Klein. I'll get ahead of you here because my initial reaction was this is not a children's or YA book. I don't know if this is going to be helpful, but I think it's really helpful, or parts of it are really helpful for any, writer who would like a more analytical approach to editing. And then I found The 6 Stages of Self-Editing for Authors by Gina Denny. It is a course on her Patreon. I just found information through her Instagram, as well as some other authors' recommendations of this method. And I took some time, I don't remember how many weeks, but a number of weeks, to go through my novel front to back and analyze it in all these different ways. So like, was the cause and effect relationship actually causal? Were the scenes connected by therefore or meanwhile or but? Or were they just traveling to like, and then this happened and then that happened? I really broke apart. Like, what's the point of this scene? What's happening? What new information do we learn? Just a bunch of stuff to give me a lot of ideas. And then also, Rin encouraged me to send the book to alpha readers, even though I had just done like a quick run through after finishing my first draft to make sure that it was consistent, because there was some stuff that I decided to change mid, first draft, and so I just continued writing as if those things had already been changed. And then so I had to go back and like do a little zhuzhing to make sure that everything did in fact make sense. And so I sent it to alpha readers. I did send it to probably more alpha readers than is recommended, but I got really good feedback, and I feel like different people had different things to say, and it also gave me a really good idea for next time, like when I want to send the book to different people, of course if they're interested, but some of these people I think of kind of as critique partners, and so I think they will be reading my stuff in the future, or at least I hope they will, because their feedback was just so good, and I really appreciated it. I sent it to them. I had some ideas from that. I had some ideas from my analysis. So I created this whole big list that I broke into 3 sections. So I had one section that was brand new content. There were some scenes I needed to fill out, some stuff that I kind of just glossed over that needed to be fleshed out for character and plot and things like that. And then I had a section for like major changes, as in maybe I would be adding a new part to this scene, I would be tweaking stuff, but I wasn't going to be writing a whole scene of new words. And then minor changes. So this spanned from anything, like there were a few like really teeny tiny edits that technically I could have left until like line editing draft. But, it would take me 2 seconds, someone had pointed it out as an error, I could just change it right now and not have to worry about remembering it. So like it could be that granular, or there were a few changes that were like, oh, like delete this part or like remove this section, which to me was minor because deleting is fast. And so basically it was a scale of how long it would take me to do something and how much effort it would be. And I decided to then just go in whatever order I felt like. So I ended up doing these days where I would try to do like a day of new words and like new scenes, those changes, and then do a day of just like, okay, like what can I get done today? And I had a really fun system where I assigned them point values. So the new stuff was 3, the major was 2, and minor was 1. I counted it all up. I had 51 points to complete. I had a deadline because we were going on vacation, and I was like, I have to be done before this because I don't want to come back and have to finish what I have half finished. So I was really running as fast as I could to finish this. So I had these 51 points. I had to do about 4 points a day. I ended up doing it. It was great. I did it in time. I was really pleased and proud. So to circle back just ever so slightly, the 6 stages of editing by Gina Denny are really how I'm compartmentalizing this, because something that I have found is the novel has legs. Like, I think it could probably stand on its own, maybe, but they're real rough. Like, they could snap at any moment. To me, as someone with hopes and dreams for this novel, it is not, it's not there yet. It's an early draft, and that's fine, but, I have to get it to that place where it is a later draft. And there's just so much that I want to change and I feel needs to be changed, and I can't do it all at once, because once I start doing that, then I start spiraling about like, this is bad and this needs work and I don't even know if this book is good anymore. Just like the classic dilemma that every creative person has when they're working on a big project. And so through the 6 stages of self-editing, I've broken it down to like, this is my plot edit. Next is going to be my character edit, and those are both developmental, and then I will reevaluate if I need to do more developmental edits or if I'm good to move on. And then I'll do world building, chapter, nuance, which is a bit of like a wibbly wobbly term, but basically it's like, does all the foreshadowing work? Does all the dialogue consistent between like one character? Like, do they sound the same throughout the novel? Is the amount of interiority an appropriate amount for this? Like, am I not trusting the reader enough? Am I trusting the reader to understand what's happening with the information I'm giving them? Is the information I'm giving clear? Like, those kind of like final edits that aren't line edits, but are almost line edits. And then the last stage is line edits. So for the draft 2 and 2.5, I am only thinking about plot. And so far, it has been great because, for example, there's one character who really needs a character arc glow up. And that is something I could so easily spiral about. But I get to be like, no, that's a draft 3 problem. I don't have to think about that right now. Right now, I'm thinking about the plot. And I know I'm not pushing it off. Like, I'm not saying that's not an issue, because I know it's an issue and like I can feel in my body it's an issue. But that will be taken care of in draft 3. Everything has a place. Everything will get its time to have my brain attention on it, but I'm not going to be flitting around doing little bits and pieces. Because I definitely could edit the novel that way, where I'm like, you know, take a little plot developmental editing and a little character developmental editing. And also, this scene needs to be fixed. Like, I almost fell in the trap yesterday of fixing my first chapter because the transitions are not good and I need to like review the like motivation reaction units and also the way that flashback is working. And it needs that, but that is a chapter edit problem. The plot is fine, all the information is there. That's not my problem for right now. And I almost did it. But then I would have lost momentum on fixing the other plot related issues. I have to stay on track because otherwise I will just do little picky bits and it will be uneven. Like I think it will get too muddied if I'm trying to take this big project and do this big thing and I can hold neither of those ideas in my brain by themselves, let alone together. So as I said, for draft 2, that was in my brain doing all of those big edits. I would like to, and we'll see if I end up doing this or not, but I would like to go from front to back in between each like of those big edits. So technically I'm like draft 2 is done. I was debating going just straight into character developmental edits, because what that will entail when I start draft 3 is I will do some more analysis and really dive deep into like what is the character arcs, what is happening, where's the turning points, and plot it out and like all this information for it, and that will give me a really good idea of what needs to change, and then I will do all of those. But in between, I would like to do like a full pass of the novel. I could not, but I think that would be good because I tend to also have like a lot of things of like, I need to do more of this. For example, I was wondering, should I make this mystery more solvable? Or I added some items that were given in like a new scene that I wrote that need to then be used in later scenes. And I haven't like totally decided which scenes those are. I know as I'm reading through, I'm gonna be like, oh, this is the perfect moment to use this item. So I'm just gonna go from front to back. And so that's my idea, is in between each draft, I will go from front to back. It also means, because I can't totally help myself, even though I'm trying to segment it apart, I am probably going to do a little bit of line editing, and I think I'm okay with that. I think I'm holding myself back enough from like really going hard. I haven't printed it out yet, and once I print it out, that's when that will be over. Like, I won't be able to stop myself. So I'm not printing it until we get to line editing, or maybe scene or like chapter editing. We will see. That's my draft 2.5, is going back from start to finish, pushing down all my instincts to edit on a chapter level and put the stuff back in where I need it and like do that. I would say like draft 2 went pretty well. I also felt really prepared, and I think that was what brought it together for me in this one. Having that clear vision and those bullet points that I could just go through and be like, I need to add when everyone says goodbye to each other. Perfect. Done. Did it. It felt easier to me. I can't share it yet, so I do feel like this is a bit of a tease. I made a workbook for myself that has all of these worksheets to go through. It just gave me so much information about the book and really like led me to think about, what is this book like? And it's all written down so I can come back to it. That to me was the most helpful part of draft 2. A lot of the editing books that I have don't spend a lot of time on developmental editing. They're just kind of like, is your plot cause and effect? Do your characters have an arc? Does it seem okay? There you go. Which doesn't really work for me, especially as a newer writer. I think a lot of these things as I'm doing them, I will internalize them. Like, I can tell I'm starting to ask some of those questions while I'm drafting other projects, or like while I'm editing short stories and things like that. So I think it's just a really good, like lesson or practice for me that those books are not always providing, which is fine. I think as a more experienced author, you might just be able to be like, yeah, does this character have a character arc? But I really like a concrete thing. I like a specific question. I love an analysis. Numbers are great. That was the most helpful bit for draft 2. There's definitely still things that I am trying to figure out and don't really have an answer for yet. So I've just been like, let's see what we can do. But there are so many more tools I have now to do this. If you are about to embark on some developmental editing in the plot area, let me share with you just a few of the things that I was thinking about. So first of all, I really had to define what is this book. So I did that a few ways. I wrote the premise in one sentence, I wrote some pretend flap copy, and then a short summary that's 750 words or less. I had already made a mood board and a playlist, but if that's something you haven't done, think about some other ways, like how can I conceptualize this novel? What is this novel about? Make a word cloud out of your novel if you feel so inclined. And then as you're rereading that first draft, write down what's working, what isn't working. That will give you a good idea of like, what is your novel, what isn't. Is your idea of what your novel is aligning with what you have in the book? And then I took each scene and I wrote, where is this? What's the time? Make a little timeline. I love a timeline. Which characters are major players in this scene? What do they want at the beginning? And I did this for every character, even if they weren't that important to the scene, because theoretically I have heard the advice that every character should want something, even if they're mentioned for a moment. So I was trying to really stretch my brain on that one. And then summarize the scene's action, like what happens in the scene. Write it in one sentence and then in one paragraph. Categorize the scene. What is the type of action that happens? Scenes will have more than one, but like what's the main one? Is it physical action? Something happening? Is it reflection? Is it flashback? A turning point? Revelation? Non-reality? It's like a dream sequence or like a portal in a fantasy world or like something like that. Or is it mostly dialogue? What new information do we learn or what changes take place? And what is the point of this scene? I also kept track of all the narrative questions and how many narrative questions we had going on at a point. This, I think, is really good for identifying the tension. What are our readers thinking about while they're reading these scenes? Do they have like 20 questions that they're juggling? Does the amount of narrative questions increase? Are we closing those narrative questions at the rate that makes sense for your genre? Is it a genre where the narrative questions are open until the very end? Or they close periodically as we learn new ones? Where are they introduced? Where are they resolved? And then keeping track of the storylines. What are the different plots? The main plot and the subplots. What are these types of plots? Are they a conflict plot, a mystery, or a lack, which is where someone needs to get something? What's the inciting incident of this plot? What's the escalating and complicated action? Where's the climax and the resolution? Do these different turning points within the plot align in a way that's works for your story structure and your genre? What I really, really loved also about the magic words is the information is so wide open to whatever structure you're using, whatever structure you're not using. And I think it gives a lot of really helpful points and things to think about if you don't follow a specific structure. I'm a big fan of like follow the structure that your story needs, that works with the genre and is still interesting and does what the story needs it to do. But that's kind of hard because I don't necessarily have every save the cat beat or something like that. Like I can't map my story onto something like that. And so having this language of like, oh, this is a turning point and this is like the different kinds of turning points or what it means to be a turning point, all this different stuff about like what this scene is doing. And so you can really figure out what is my book and what do I want it to be and are those things aligned and how can I edit to make that better. I really like that it encourages you to think about it within the idea of your own story. Then I created a book map, which is basically just a giant flowchart so you can visualize all the scenes. Part of this was to also determine scene transitions and if like the causal relationship was good between the scenes, but also to like track the narrative questions. I ended up making a graph for this instead because it was just too much on the flowchart. My favorite part about this is just being able to see 80,000 words on a few pages. Like that's something I can look at. I can visualize it. It's right in front of me. It's not 80,000 words. So that's what I did. Yeah, and then just like doing some analysis of, are there scenes with too few narrative questions? Are there scenes with too many? To give some ideas about like the tension throughout the novel. Is it what I want? Is it working? Is it not? And then just some like really classic checklist items. Is the inciting incident within the first few chapters? Do I have most of my transitions between scenes as causal relationships? Or do I need to reevaluate that? And does each scene have at least one narrative question? Does the variety and frequency of the different types of action you have within the scenes fit your theme, genre, and narrative intentions? Does the spread of plot, inciting incidents, climaxes, and resolutions feel satisfying and aligned with the genre and narrative? Any other observations you have? And then compare what you want your novel to be, what you've written as like your summary and your flap copy, and like, this is what this is what my mood board is, this is the vibe I want. Compare that to your book map. Does it align? Are there like any scenes, plots, or structural elements that don't fit in that vision? What do you need to do so that your manuscript matches that? And then just like writing out the game plan of like, this is what I want to do. So that's basically a short version of the workbook. I will, of course, share it with you at some point, but I only have like the first few sections completed because I'm trying not to get into the weeds too much thinking about later drafts, so I'm trying to stick pretty close. So I'm basically preparing each section as I go. That is my story about draft 2. It worked really well. Draft 2.5 is definitely testing me more with the compartmentalization of all of it, but I'm doing my best to persist and just really stay focused on that plot. On another note, it was really fun to do these edits during the spring because Beatrix's book is set in the spring and it's a really spring book. It's full of the color green. The main character, Beatrix, is green. What's it? For a while, I had a really fun time saying that Muppets from Outer Space was a comp title. It's not really a comp title. I can't use it as a comp title, but like in my heart, it's a comp. And so she's a whatever. And she's trying to figure that out. There's just so much green, so much spring. I was really trying to infuse that in the new scenes I was writing. It was really fun to be like, I'm in spring, and Beatrix is in spring, and we're all in spring together. Because spring also might be one of my favorite seasons. I try really hard to love every season, but I end up liking the temperate seasons more, and also winter, because I just don't like the heat. That was really fun. All of these clips that you've been watching throughout this, I don't know what to call it. All of these clips are from just the last few months. All the early spring stuff is when I was like planning. It felt so aligned because like everything was blooming and I was like, I'm thinking about Beatrix again. She's in my mindscape. All of the beach and mountain stuff are from later when I was either doing the actual writing or thinking about draft 2.5. Beatrix just living in my head rent-free, as she should. She's my creation, so she should not be paying rent. I don't charge rent. Anyway, so that's how draft 2 went for me and how draft 2.5 is going. Some tips and like the information that I used to help me do draft 2, in case it is also helpful to you. And just a little bit of background about this cozy fantasy that I'm working on. I'm so excited about it. My favorite part is that I can add whatever I want. Like that to me is the most fun. It's just a world of your wildest imagination. It is still my most fun idea. If you are revising, if you are in draft 2, I'd love to hear from you. How is it going? If you're anywhere in a draft, let me know. I'm curious. I love to know. If you found any of these tips helpful, I'm so glad. If you have any tips for me, I'm all ears. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Happy writing. I hope you have fun. That's what I hope for you. Okay, bye.